All right, and now we are going to have on Mr. Manziel for our Pennies Going in Raw interview, who turned $17 into over $35,000 in just 2 weeks playing extremely recklessly. We would not recommend this to absolutely anyone, but the fact that he was able to turn a $20 bill into a brand new Jeep is incredible. So could you, before you kind of touch on that, could you kind of explain what your trading journey was prior to this whole extravaganza?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started trading right before the pandemic. I think it was like February, January of last year. And just kind of literally knew nothing. Started like investing in I think iBio. I was like, oh yeah, like Twitter says it's going to go to the moon, just lost money. And then I started following you on Twitter. Was lucky enough to, throw my stimulus check into Robinhood, like the legit meme, and played UAVS. And that was my first swing, and turned that $1,200 into, I think, like around $6,000. And then did really well during like the COVID market up through August. And then, the COVID market kind of stopped, and, it's been like a different market from that point forward. But that's the short story.
Did you sell UAVS at the top? Because that's quite a return.
I did. I was in it, like my average was like 79 or 80 cents, it was when nobody was talking about it. And then I was like, okay, I like this one the most, because I was like, big e-commerce partner, like that sounds good, like play the run up. And I woke up like one morning super hungover after my friend's birthday, and I was like looked at my phone, and I just saw somebody posting that like leaked video of the Amazon partnership, and I was like, what the fuck is happening? And I opened my Robinhood app at the time and was like, what the fuck? I was up like $2,000, the day it first ran to $2, And then I was like, I'm gonna hold. I was like, I think the FOMO is gonna take this. And I think I ended up selling in the high fours, right before, I sold 10:30 the morning of the day.
It had a hard resistance at the 5, and then once that meeting hit, it just dropped a lot and really fast. So you kind of had those big COVID swings, and then with the election coming up, you decide to start, or you have this Webull account with the free stocks it gives you, which was $17 worth at the time.
So I started that account in the summer. Just to preface, I started that account in the summer because I wanted to do the $250 to 25K challenge. And I let that account get 2 referrals in it. And I had the account just sitting there, basically ready to use.
So what happened to the $250 challenge? Did that just not go well, and then it went down to 17?
No, I never put the money in there. I opened the account for that purpose, but never deposited the money or got around to it. So the account was just sitting there, and I never deposited anything into it, but I had it as my referral link in my
bio, I got you.
Sent it
Starsky, can you make sure he's turned down a little? He's super fucking loud for me, to where it's almost staticky. Is it the same for you, Hugh? No, Manziel. It may just be me.
Manziel's
I don't know if it. Okay, then that's fine. All right, cool. So you just didn't do the $250 challenge, and then the election rolls around. You decide to play small. What are you doing in your main account at this time? Just swinging super small?
So yeah, I'll touch on this briefly, but in my big account, I was getting really frustrated in August. I lost a lot. I was all the way at 20K in July, and I was so close to getting over PDT and what I thought was the next step, right? And then I just got everything I touched, it seemed was just offering bad data, just getting absolutely wrecked. And I got down to 10K, and I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go super heavy in SPAC and just wait till the fall and just one big swing, and that was the worst idea ever, because I was in way too like not high. I wasn't high. I was in like at 13 was my average, but it like seemingly like that became way too high. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to sell like down for a loss on this. Like, I'm just going to put it in a different account, not look at it. And I'll like fucking look at it in like 6 months or whatever. And so I was kind of like forced to start something else. Like I wasn't, you know what I mean?
Well,
like
if you still haven't looked at it, it's doing pretty well. You're up you're up like 80%.
Yeah, I did look at it. And I've taken some profit from that, but the point being, I like kind of had to do something. So I was like, all right, like I'm just going to see how fast I can grow the small account. And so I started with the 17. I looked today just to make sure, but the first I tried to, so this was the 2 days before the election, the 3rd is when I started using the account. And this was when Neo was like starting to run a little bit. And I like tried to play a Neo call, like out of the money weekly that week because it was cheap. And that didn't work. And I lost like $2 or $3 and I sold. And then that night, like the on the 4th, like the day of the election, I was like, SPY is just like getting wrecked. So I'm going to buy like calls, like week dated, like, a week out. And I had paper traded options like for during October just to like practice. But I was like,
so is this like your first time actually playing options for real?
I had played them like small before, but not like full on. Right. And so I bought SPY 370 calls the day of the election, like, before everything, like who was going to get announced. I was like, the market's going to bounce either way. And I think I got 3 of them because they were like $5, I think, or like they were 5 cents. So $5 per contract. And, of course, like the market did bounce the next day. Right. And, it went up to like, I think those went like 200%. So that ended up giving me like $43 in the account on the 5th of November. And I had seen like people loading ACB the night before, and ACB popped really hard pre-market, and then it like went down. And so it opened. I was like, okay, like I'm going to try to play ACB today. Like, cause I think the volume is there, and this was when Biden was it was looking like he was going to be projected as the winner. So that morning I literally put that entire, like at the time, $43, I think it was like, I bought 4 contracts for the weekly. So there was one day, it was a Thursday.
For anyone watching that doesn't know, ACB is a weed stock when he says
right.
He figured Biden was going to win.
Yeah. And I knew the news was trending towards that. And I like ACB dipped it open. I bought those. I got them for like, I got 5 calls. So like $5.50 call strikes. I bought them for like under 10 cents. I think they were like 8 cents. And I was like, wow, this is only like 50 cents out of the money. Like these could print, and I was like, I'm just going to do it. And I bought 4 of those. And then I was like, I'm just going to buy I had $5 in buying power left. And I was like, I'm going to buy a 6.5 call because they're 4 cents, it was like $4. Bought it. And I was like, all right, fuck it. Like this is the, like, hopefully this works. And ACB ended up reversing at like 10 o'clock in the morning. And that was the day that it went to like, the first day it ever ran at all. It ran to like 6:20, I think, like by like 3 o'clock. And I was up 1,000% already. I was like, holy shit.
So what percentage was the stock up when you were up 1,000% on your calls?
I want to say it was like up 20% for the day, maybe, like the first day it ran.
Yeah. So that just kind of speaks volumes to how much the risk reward on a call can be, and the reward sometimes up 1,000% when the stock is only up 20%. And this is turning what was $40, and now it's what is it at this time after that one?
It was at like $400. And yeah, to touch on what you said, like there was a really good chance that those could have expired worthless had ACB not ran. But I looked at the chart. I was like, okay, like if this gets volume, it can. And I saw people loading the night before. But yeah, that turned into like, I was at like 473 the like night of the 5th. And then I was like, dude, people were like, I was like, I'm up 1,000% on these ACB calls. People were like, sell, like you're crazy, don't hold. I was like, fuck it, I'm swinging these till tomorrow, because I knew they were going to pop really hard if we gapped up. And I knew that Biden was starting to get more traction. So I was like, I think this is good risk reward to some extent. So
yeah, up 1,000%. I think it was 875% was the exact number, but Jesus.
So I held overnight, and then of course, like that morning, everything gapped up, and ACB went to like, I think it went to like $14 that day.
Damn.
And those calls printed 6,800 and like 9%.
So then your $400 account or $40 turned $400 account is now well over 2,000.
I double checked today. It was $44 turned into like 1,900 and like $70 because I didn't sell at the top. Yeah. So to give some context, I sold the ones I bought for 10 cents. I sold for over $4 each. And then I sold the 6.5 call for like $2, I think. So $200.
And just for context, Hugh, what's the most you've ever made off of an option call similar to that?
I mean, so I'm going to consider that a lotto. I'm going to consider that a lotto. And so for anyone watching, a lotto is basically as the options get closer to expiring, the more that they are out of the money, the lower the price goes. Hence why these things were trading at, would you say like 10 cents?
And 4 cents.
And 4 cents, where earlier in the week, they might have been trading at like 60 cents, 70 cents. So, so that was you hit that perfectly. I mean, I really don't think there's a better trade out there. Probably in the past like 2 months, I haven't made on options. I mean, the Zoom calls went 300%. But I mean, I haven't touched. I've maybe touched 1,000%. Nothing. No 6,000%. No. So that that's an incredible. I mean, you hit that probably perfectly. For ACB to do that and for you to take the weeklies, that was gutsy.
Yeah, and it really sucked because I never hit anything like that either. It kind of like set in like when I did the math, and I was like, wow, if I had even thrown $300, like the math was like, wow, holy shit, like
18 grand or something.
Yeah, but what a lot of people don't understand, they're like, oh, like 17 to like 35. It's like I had the first, real trade I made in that account was literally insane, right? Like that gave me a major like pushing point.
So at that point, it's about a fifth of your other account. You said it was about down to like 10K after the bad trades. Were you like, shit, this is actually real money now? Or, well, obviously knowing what you turned it into, we know you didn't, but why weren't you like, crap, this is 2,000 actual dollars now. Maybe I should be careful with it. But instead you were like, what's next?
Because I knew, like, I noticed the theme was hot, and I was like, okay, like this is gonna turn into more. Like this is when the market gets hot. Like everybody had been waiting to trade after the election. So I was really ballsy, and I put all that money I bought SNDL shares to swing over the weekend, and I bought I bought one more ACB call just because I was like, why not at this point? I was like, wheat's going to continue into next week, and it did. And so that gave me like on Monday of that week, I think I ended up having like 2,500, 2,400 after that.
Another 25% day,
yeah, into Monday. And then so I need to double check, but that was when the market started to rotate a little bit. And this was the really big week, like in terms of not only the market, but the account is NEO started really running. I don't know if you remember this, Hugh, but this was the week that NEO went from like 35 to like 50, right? Like that, it was this week.
Yeah.
And so at the start of that week, I like noticed that was happening, and I was like, wow, like this is a really good time for the EV market to like do the same thing we just did, right? Because NEO going from a $3 stock to 50, it automatically gives validity in people's minds that it's at least possible for these other companies that are trading at that valuation to do the same thing.
So real quick, and I just want to touch on this because you took the options, right? Right, that's what you said. You took the options
For which one?
for you were talking about like the EV market, and you said
Yeah.
So you took the options. So for anyone watching that doesn't know much about options, even if, as you were saying, that this would give volume to other plays. Part of even the PFE call that the options I'm in right now is that even if the price stays stagnant, options volume, it comes down to simple supply and demand. Even if the price is stagnant, if people are buying the option, then an option that's trading at 10 cents, if there's people buying this option, it can easily go to 20 cents, even if the price is staying stagnant. So I mean that's 100% return. Maybe that's a little crazy, but even going from like, let's say 60 cents to 65 cents is, kind of like Manziel was talking, was that if the price stays stagnant, but there's a lot of volume coming into the options, then that can take the option crazy, just on volume on itself. So that's kind of, I think that's where you were going with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was like, I think this is the market is about to rotate to like the speculative EV plays, which were beaten down like badly, like these, Solo and AYRO, and from their they ran in August to like $12 and $6 and stuff. Like we had that little run, like when Tesla was going crazy over the summer. And I was like, okay, well, like a lot of these charts, they tend to repeat themselves. So I think like we're primed to do that again. And I was talking about this on Dan's like Twitter live stream, but I saw the above average day in volume on Solo. And I was like, okay, I'm going to load in the money calls because I had a little bit more money now, so I could play safer. But I still wanted to try to grow this account as fast as possible. And I was extremely risk tolerant, like to obviously a nth degree, right? And I took those, and that was the day Solo was up like 5 or 10% or something like that. And the next day, Solo gapped to like 6 something. And I had loaded Solo and AYRO calls like the day before. And so that like took the account to like 4 or 5,000. So that was like another, like, I think those went like 600%. And I wasn't like all in on Solo. I had gotten AYRO too, but AYRO hadn't really moved yet. So Solo was like the bigger win, but I only had like $1,000 in it. But those went like 300 or 400%. And so that gave me like 4,000, 4,500, something like that, up till that week. So at the end of that week, I like got all cocky. This was like the first like kind of test I had. I got really cocky and I was like, okay, like there's no reason the market should be ripping like this. So this was like not the week prior to this past one, but the week before that, like right when the lockdowns were starting to happen again.
So around the week of the 15th.
Yeah, like that week. And I was like, thinking I was really, really smart. And I loaded Zoom calls on Friday when it was beaten down. It was like 392. And I was like, Zoom's got earnings in 2 weeks. New York's in a lockdown.
That's really close to the bottom. Yeah.
Dude, yeah. And what sucks is I was like a little bit early on that. I was like a week early in that like point of thinking. Like I was thinking correctly. I was just like a little bit too early and I lost on the Zoom calls over the weekend. Like that swing didn't pan out. So then I still had more AYRO calls. And so like my account went back down to like under $4,000. And then the EV market continued that week. Right.
Whenever you finally incurred a loss, did that kind of change the way that you played it all, or were you just still trying to grow it as fast as possible?
I've become like very unemotional when it comes to trading as a whole.
Yeah, Yeah, I think with that, and also the whole exactly are you saying you're risk tolerant if your next play you lost 20% of your account on? I wouldn't say that's risk tolerant.
Well, I was saying like my risk tolerance is very high. Like I'm willing to incur a lot of risk. Like I will take on.
Oh, we
Yeah.
have different levels or different definitions of risk tolerance. Okay.
Yeah. So like I'm like extreme. Like I'm like Bob says this all the time, but he's like I'm willing to hold. Like I have a very high risk tolerance, so he's willing to hold like really big positions. Because he's confident in it, and so that happened.
So why wouldn't you have gotten the Zoom calls further out if or you were just confident that it would have happened over the weekend? Because now
Yeah.
you're saying those would have been up huge.
Right. Yeah. So, but I obviously like premiums for Zoom are like really expensive, like large cap premiums on Zoom, like especially backdated like that are because they're pricing in earnings, like the run up. So there was no way I could afford those like with size. So and Zoom can move really quickly. Like it moves like $30-$40 a day sometimes, if
Just this Friday, I moved, I think $28 or so.
Exactly, which is what can make those calls like it's like Tesla. Like that's why people play it, is because it can make you a lot of money really quickly, but you can also lose a lot, right?
So you were going for the home run, or not the home run, but you were going for the biggest percentage. You were trying to time it right to go for the biggest percentage gain.
I was leveraging myself like to the point where I felt like I could make the most with the least, right? Like that's been the thought process. But I didn't really like let it affect me. I was just like, okay, like I'm gonna like find the next best setup. And EV was still really hot because Biden was, gaining more traction. Like it looked more and more like he was going to win. And that was the week that EV like got really, really hot. And what's crazy is on Tuesday of that week, I played Hugh's favorite company in the world, KNDI. And I was like,
this is so mad.
This is the only one that hasn't run yet. And I was like, they haven't had news in a while. They gapped up really hard last time. I bought those. I bought some like calls out of the money for them. I did make money on those, but the really sad part is I sold right before the news came out. And that trade alone would have taken me to like 25K if I had just held, but I sold way too early. Yeah. And so, but I was like, okay, like just move on to the next. Like that's been the whole process. And I played like Mara and Riot. And those made me like $1,000. So at this point I'm like back to around like 60, like 200 at this point, during the week of the like 18th. And then for some reason I was like, I think this is the day. Like that Thursday, I was like, I think that like Solo is gonna fucking just have its complete. Like I think it's gonna max itself out and like, make a new high. And so I bought more Solo calls on that Thursday, which sounds crazy, but I did, and those went like 600%. And
so you're being risky definitely paid off. How much in Solo calls did you have, and how much did that net you about?
I had a pretty large position. I had like over like 2,800, and I also had AYRO calls. I had those AYRO calls at 5 cents, and they ran, just to give you some context, I did not hold for
AYRO. I think ran from what was around $4 to $9 or so.
It ran. To like,
or am I thinking 11. Of I'm thinking of WWR. I don't know. There were so many of those that went, but yeah, that one had definitely a good run.
Yeah, and
I mean, AYR. Yeah, no, I'm just looking at it real quick. It went to 11 from like literally 3.
Yeah.
So,
and I had $5 calls at 5 cents, and those calls ran to $3.40. And I had like 300 of them or like 200 of them. And I sold those at like 65 though. And then I put those profits into Solo. I had like $3,000, and then that ran like 200%. And I was scaling out, like like it sounds like it's being extremely risky, but I was scaling out like when I had profit, I was already scaling. Like I wasn't just like leaving the lot in there and just waiting to sell in one bunch. Like I was scaling as the price went up on those like overnight gap ups.
So, question: would you consider yourself more of like a thesis trader, or more of like a options? I mean, like we'll call it like a delta gamma. Hedging. You know what I mean? So, like, are you looking more for the quick buck with low priced options, or so we call like more of like a technical, or are you more of a thesis trader?
I was just guessing.
No, I definitely believe in the thesis basis like really heavily. Like that's what I've used for pretty much all of my trades is combining the theme, the chart, and then realizing like, okay, if this happens, then this can happen, right? But like it needs to close over a certain point, and there needs to be like the volume needs to be there, right? Like that, all the components have to add up for me to take a trade in the first place. And so like all of those components I would analyze before I bought the contracts. Like I wasn't just like, oh, let me buy this and let me buy this. Like I was analyzing the chart, the volume, am I buying at a support level after it's already ran? Like I'm not buying the top. And so I learned the personalities of the stocks. Like Solo likes to dip at the end of the day, and then it likes to, like bullshit for the first like hour of after hours, and then it gaps up in the morning, dips right before open, and then it gaps up between like you can literally time it to like a certain time frame, like between like 9:45 and like 10:15 is when Solo usually will hit its high of the day in the morning. And I started to like learn that. So it was much easier for me to trade them because they repeat themselves.
Oh, great. How did you learn about personality of stocks? Where'd you hear about that?
Oh, I don't know. I think it might have been Hugh Henney. I don't know.
No, he meant the Pennies Going in Raw podcast. So you had those massive gains off of the solos and all the EVs. So you most of these gains are off of the EV sector and weed sector, looks like, and just Biden plays. After what is your account value up at this point now? After those, I think it was solo calls went crazy.
So we're at like almost like 9,500, something like that, right? Because I had scaled out, so I didn't like get the full whatever. But the biggest day came the next week. This was the day that like everything, I was like, this might actually work. And
this is this past week.
Yeah. It was actually the end of the week before that. So like I'm forgetting the dates.
Like, last Friday.
Yeah.
It would have been like the 21st or something.
Yeah, it was like FCEL had ran a little bit the day before, and I was like, maybe it's going to rotate because like Solo had dropped an offering, AYRO had dropped an offering, and then FCEL ran really hard to like $4, and then I was like, you know what, they might it might be time to rotate again, and I kind of like realized that, and I looked at the 5-year chart on FCEL, and I was like, wow, this thing has a gap to fill, and I bought $5 calls on FCEL that day that it ran to like 6, whatever. And those went, I did not have a large position in that, but those went like 2,000%. And the same day, Tesla ran super hard and I bought a $500 call for that, which was probably the most like YOLO trade out of this entire account process was that Tesla call. I was like, dude, Tesla's been like, as soon as it broke 464, which was a key resistance, I bought the $500 call. And that went 1,000%. So that day was crazy. That it went from 80 cents when I bought it to at the peak, it peaked at like $11.
So the account went from $9,000 to what after this big day?
I believe it went to, I want to say it was at like 12 at that point, 11, like right around there. And then played energy.
And then we're kind of coming into this past week, which for some context, you started this last week at 11,000 and ended it at 35. So we had another 300% week. How did that shit come?
Yep. So over the weekend, I was like, all right, energy is definitely next because FCEL went to like $8. I was like, okay, like time to find like the other energy theme plays that are going to run off of this, just like EV. And I was like, I got into OEG and FTEK on Monday. And of course, I was like, this is like the sector had volume really good on Friday. I noticed that there was above average volume on OEG. And I knew like a few people had been calling it as like a sympathy. And I looked at the 5-year charts on both. And I was like, yeah, like it's the same setup, right? Like that's like a thesis trade. Like when you see above average volume, it fits the theme. And then like if it can open and or if OEG can close over a certain point on Friday, which it did, then the thesis is validated, right? So I took those trades on Monday, and of course, like they gapped up, which was crazy. So FTEK printed like 1,000%, and OEG,
So this is your third or fourth 1,000% option.
Yeah,
in
like fourth. Yeah. But I mean,
No,
like
I need the next one. I need this Fridays. I need this Fridays.
Yeah, the past few Fridays have been insane, definitely. But yeah, so that was like FTK was my biggest like single trade. It actually reached like I only had $1,000 in that one, but it printed at like 1,000%, and I had like 9,000 in profit that morning. I stupidly.
So that hits you at the 20. You're at the 20K mark then, and then and
that's what's crazy is people don't realize when I had the screenshot of me being at 15K at the end of last week or the end of, this past week, whenever I posted it. I actually had hit 22 that morning, and I was I felt like an idiot because I didn't take all my profit. I was like, maybe like SCL ran multiple days, like it's holding up decently well, and which was stupid. Like I should have just taken profit like at that point looking back, but I risked some of it, and like that's why it came back. Like I could have been way higher, but I was like, FCEL ran multiple days, so I'm gonna wait. And then that definitely kind of took a hit, but it was. I mean, I still walked out of there with like $5,000 in profit on FTEK, and I think like $1,000 on OEG, which put me at the 15 8 mark.
Okay, so you're back at 16, and this is like Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Because this is when I think you posted it.
Yeah.
And then you somehow teleported that to 35,000 in what I think was like a day.
Yep. So this is just one of those like gut feeling trades, but I was like, okay, well, the sector is definitely going to rotate again, and I knew that the House was potentially going to vote on legalization next week. And I remember like I had heard Hugh mention it on the podcast, like the last one you guys did with Lead. And I was like, you know what? I think this is the time, because the weed stocks were quiet. Like, ACB was back at like 7, and I had been like accumulating already. And I was like, you know what? This is going to be the trade that I want to go heavy in, because I felt confident about it. So I loaded.
What's your definition of heavy? Out of your 15,000.
I put like 7,000 or 8,000 in this.
Damn.
In this trade.
Okay.
So I was confident. I was like, it's just a matter of time before this happens. And I knew if we got the news this week, like ACB had that like little fake out run, where it ran like it gapped up after hours when energy plays were going, and then it chilled, it consolidated at like 9 the next day, but it didn't really like actually run. So I had already been loading because last time ACB went crazy, it went to 14, right? And I was like, okay, there's a clear gap to fill on the chart. So I loaded the $15 call because, they had really big outstanding interest, and I could tell people were loading them like in big volume on that expiration, which was the December 18. Like, it's, a further out expiration, right? And I saw there was a lot of outstanding interest on the $20 call. So, and this is around the time that like Sperm Trades and I had been like kind of bouncing ideas off each other like that entire week. And he kind of helped me like see that a little bit too. So we were like, okay, like this is a really good, like, trade. Like we felt confident about it. And so, yeah, I had about 9 grand in that. And then on Friday, of course, the news came out that the house was gonna.
And that went up 500, 600%.
Yeah, like they're up like 500% right now. I am actually still, yeah, and that, of course, so like having 10 grand in that, obviously, it's gonna go crazy,
Yeah.
right? Probably the craziest last 30 minutes of a market I've ever had, but
I bet.
but and at that point I was like, okay, like I need to take some profit here, even though I still feel like weed hasn't had its like real, like this is the biggest catalyst weed plays have had in years.
Yeah.
Like this is a major, even if it's somewhat symbolic, like it's still a major catalyst that's gonna, like that's just how the sentiment of this market works.
So now that this one's at 35,000, are you going to continue going crazy stupid with this account? Are you going to maybe take out 20 grand to put in the other account so you'll be over PDT on that one? Is this your new main account? Where do you go from here with this one?
Well, there's been something about this account that I really love doing, and it's kind of like I'm just kind of determined.
Making like 100,000% gains is something most people love doing.
Yeah, but I think it's more of just am determined to see how far that I can take it. I'm not going to be like, to answer your question, I'm not going to be playing the same way. Like I think that's an important part to note.
I think you definitely took advantage of literally as of the day the market got hot, and then to where it is now. I think whenever. I think this will definitely clear up a lot of things from the doubters. The only thing that a doubter said that gave me like, okay, this is a little concerning, but I think you kind of summed it up because you said you had $250 in the account prior to it being 17, correct?
No, so I had not used the account at all. Like that account had just been laying dormant, and I posted the referrals that I had from the summer. So that's
right.
When
no, I'm more thinking about the percent, because even if $20 goes to 20,000, wouldn't that be 100,000% gain?
I think that when Webull, like I have it set to the date that I started using the account, and so I think,
that's what I was saying. The $250. That's what I think the percent is off from there. That's what I was thinking too.
And it doesn't calculate it like exactly because it has like 17 the day before, but then it has like technically I made money on that day. So I went from 17 to 44 on that day. So I think it calculates it from the $44. So
yeah, it's
I think it's at like 50,000% right now.
You posted enough proof for me to believe you, and I also kind of know you, so I believe you. I think this is 100% legit. He's posted his P&L and everything, but I think that at least clears that up. How do you feel as opposed? Last question before we let you go. How do you feel different as a trader than you did just 3 weeks ago?
I think it's just taught me a lot about, because everybody's like, oh, like it's like YOLO and like, there's no way and all this stuff. But like, if you can find quality setups and, buy bottom charts, then you can position yourself to get lucky a lot more, right? Like that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
You start finding luck a lot easier when you are playing, finding a thesis for your trades.
What is it? Luck is when preparation meets practice or whatever it is. I think that you had a lot of a good bit of all three.
Was that Gandhi?
Yeah, no, this is Dip Deity. They're both deities though. So, yeah, I think that sums it up, Mr. Manziel. Thank you for joining us. And this is also the end of the podcast too. So I'm gonna sign us out on this. Thank you guys for listening, and make sure to go write us 5 stars. And it's been another great episode of Pennies Going and Raw. We'll see you next week.